Good morning, good afternoon or good evening depending wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the channel where in today's video we are going to be looking at Manchester United in the 24-25 season. The entire kind of squad, the backups too, not just the starting 11, along with loads of transfers, ins and out. We're going to look at how much people are going to cost and also how much we can sell people for. So on screen now you will see that we have a goalkeeper, two fullbacks, two centre backs and a central defensive midfielder, because in any formation that Erik ten Hag decides to play, whether it be a 4-3-3, whether it be a 4-2-3-1 or 4-1-2-1-2, which is a 4-4-2 diamond of course, we are going to need a defensive midfielder. We don't currently have any. I mean, we have Casemiro, but the likelihood that he gets sold this off-season is relatively high. Of course, he could stay, which then becomes less of an issue. But I still think it's a major priority because Casemiro last season was really poor, not able to cover the ground that we need, especially in a high pressing system. He kind of lacks the athleticism now, at the age I think 32, so looking at that is definitely a problem area for us. The other one is right centre half, and then the two fullbacks are in grey, because although they are not an immediate kind of priority, to have this perfect transfer window which we're going to be looking at, I think they both need to be looked at, and potential replacements or backup to be bought in both. So starting off with Onana, there's nothing really to say. We bought him last season for 50 million and we bought him in to be a ball playing goalkeeper, and of course that was not the case because we didn't have the centre halves or even central defensive midfielders available to be able to play this way. Luke Shaw at left back was pivotal, Martinez was pivotal, Varane as well, and all three of those were injured for a vast majority of the season. And Casemiro being a shadow of him former self really didn't help either. So having kind of Martinez back, maybe Luke Shaw if he stays fit, a new right-sided right-sided centre back, and a new defensive midfielder, I feel like we are potentially going to start seeing the best out of Andre Onana, and it's exactly what we bought him for. So hopefully, as I said, this season will be the season he kicks on. In terms of right back, we have Dalot. Left back, we have Luke Shaw and Martinez. I think they're all pretty self-explanatory. Martinez is arguably our most valuable and important player in the defensive third of the pitch. He is a leader. He organises everything. He's aggressive, wins balls, but most importantly, he plays the way Erik ten Hag wants. He keeps the ball. He wants it to feet. He allows the kind of pressure of the others when they are pressed. He just keeps it. It's nice 5-10 yards, short passes, breaks the lines of press, and it's super simple for him to get out. So he is invaluable to us, and hopefully he can stay fit along with Luke Shaw. But as I said, we will be looking at those areas. Dalot was our most consistent performer over the entire season, in my opinion, and to be honest, maybe even our best player. I watched all of Manchester United games apart from a couple in the Champions League because it wasn't available as to where I was living at the time. But I was able to watch every single Premier League game, and Dalot performed consistently well. I think a 7 out of 10 every single week, which is something that it should be a bare minimum for the side of Manchester United. So Dalot, I think 100% will be the starting right back, as long as we don't kind of shift formations, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, that's kind of the back six as such. We're going to move on now to the midfield. And in the midfield, of course, we have Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes. You can kind of see Kobbie is slightly more reserved as like a number 8, and then Bruno Fernandes as a more advanced. I personally think he'll play in the number 10 position, more central, and kind of have the freedom to roam. I think that's where Bruno kind of excels, but also with this 4-3-3 it becomes more fluid. The attacking players can have a little bit more space, and yeah, but we have Kobbie, who was sensational. His breakout season unfortunately lost in the Euro final, which was yesterday. There was a really heartbreaking picture of Kobbie leant against the goalpost, which really sucked. But Yeah, I think for Manchester United, he is going to be, just like Martinez, he is invaluable. He takes the ball, he's able to deal with a lot of pressure, he comes short for it, he doesn't shy away like some of the other players in the squad. He wants the ball to feet, he drives at people, he can dribble past. His also passing is super neat and tidy, not many going stray, and being 19 years old, I mean, it's scary to see how far he could actually go, and he starts 100%. And then Bruno, I don't understand the hate towards Bruno Fernandes, because he is unbelievable. He is so pivotal to this Manchester United team in terms of creativity and what he produces in goals and assists. It's crazy. And if people, I mean, I have seen reports of obviously fans being okay with him leaving, which I think would be criminal. He needs to stay, and being the captain as well, I think we should do everything in our power to keep him and then build and add other players, so it's not just solely dependent on Bruno creating something from nothing. Like if you go back and think about Burnley away, we were terrible and it just came from a Bruno volley, which was crazy. It was such a good goal, but those are the types of moments that Bruno Fernandes can give the team. So he needs to stay, and he is going to be the biggest part to the attacking third. And then we're going to move on to the front three, who I personally think should start. I don't necessarily think this will be the front three to start. Garnacho out on the left, Amad Diallo out on the right, and then Rasmus Højlund as number 9, who could obviously switch out. As of recording this, Joshua Zirkzee has been confirmed. He's been pictured wearing the shirt. It's all done. It's completely official. They could rotate. Even Zirkzee could play out on the right. So take the kind of starting 11 with a pinch of salt, because this could change depending kind of who starts, who's fit, and all of that stuff. But yeah, Garnacho, I think he had a really nice step up in terms of productivity this season. I think this year is going to be kind of the season that shows everyone what Garnacho is. Whether he can now add more goals, more assists to his game, or he just focuses on goals, or just focuses on creating chances. I think this year is going to be kind of his most important year. And then Amad Diallo, I really hope he gets more starts, because he is a very creative and tricky winger. Comes in off the right hand side, obviously predominantly left footed, but can use his right. Links up really well with people as well. The short little 5-10 yard passes that Kobbie does as well, round the corner and then carry on making the movement. That's exactly what we needed last season, and I wasn't entirely sure why he didn't play more. I know he was injured, I think, at the start of the season. And then towards the end, he started getting a little bit more game time. So that's kind of where I think the team is going to need transfers, or the most looked at. So the front three, I think, is okay. We have a lot of depth, which I'll go into now. So we're going to start off with the goalkeeper. And of course, our backup is going to be Altay Bayindir. 26 years old. He's 6'6". He didn't play in the league. He played one game, and I think it was in the FA Cup, conceding 2. I don't really see any reason why we need another backup unless Bayindir wants first team football and leaves. Then we also have Tom Heaton as the third goalkeeper. But I think if Bayindir leaves, we will go out and sign another young goalkeeper. Potentially even, 18, 19, and then let Tom Heaton be number 2. I could see that happening for sure. But yeah, there's not really much to say. We didn't see a lot of him, and we didn't really see a lot of him in the Euros either. In terms of the right back, then, this is where the first signing is going to come from. In my opinion, as I said, this is going to be the perfect Manchester United, perfect in quotation marks, perfect transfer window for Manchester United, getting most of the targets that they look for. This is going to be a realistic one as well, with Leny Yoro, 18 years old, 6'3". He is valued around £50 million. All of the kind of valuations and things came from transfer marks. So again, take it with a pinch of salt. We could pay more, we could pay less. But yeah, I think we've offered around like 40 something million, 42 million, which is less than his valuation. So yeah, I think Leny Yoro would be somebody who would come in, and if not start at centre half, or kind of if we don't bring anyone else in, could potentially start at centre half, but to kind of bed him in for the first season at least, potentially I would play him at right back. And the reason would be is because then you would transition to a back three, which Ten Hag likes to build up in, either in, you know, a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, where we build up in this 3-1-6 that he is forever using, and having a right kind of centre back at right back who is physically dominant, who is quick and good at defending as well, and is good on the ball. He's very progressive. Being able to play him at right back and then just slide in as a 3, it kind of sorts all of our problems out. And of course, we still have the option with Diego Dalot. In terms of what he played 32 games. That wasn't all starts, of course, but he got 2 goals as well. 18 years old, he has ridiculous potential. Real Madrid are obviously interested too. So if we are able to kind of snatch Euro from Real Madrid, it will be a really, really big signing for us. And he could come in and start at centre-half. But in terms of centre-half, I'm actually going to be going with Matthijs de Ligt. Now, we have so much news on de Ligt, but there hasn't been anything concrete as of now. It's currently the 15th of July at 12:30 or midday. So nothing has been confirmed yet. It's it's looking very likely that we do sign Matthijs de Ligt, just the final details and all of that good stuff. But if he comes in, he definitely transforms the way Manchester United play. And at the centre-half position, playing next to Martinez, we will have 2 monstrous leaders. He's only 24 as well, 6'2", very dominant physically. He's valued around 65 million. Again, that's transfer marked, but I believe we'll pay quite a bit less than that, and it will also be in installments. So even though, let's say we pay 50 million for de Ligt, it won't be 50 million up front. Let's say it will be 15, and then we'll pay in installments over the next 3 or 4 years to get kind of those deals. So although, for example, Euro was 50 million as well, and we're going to be paying 40, we might only be paying 10 million or 11 million for 4 years. So that's kind of how we're going to get around the amount of players that I have put into this team. It won't just be lump sums up front, it will be kind of installments, which I think most teams do now anyway. But Matthijs de Ligt being, in my opinion, the most important position to get. Of course, we do have backups in this area, but they don't allow us to play the same way Ten Hag wants. We can't keep a high line, we can't kind of build out from the back, unfortunately. And the player to kind of cover him is going to be Harry Maguire. Now, there are 2 players. There's either Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof. Unfortunately, Cambuala will not be here because he has been sold to, is it Villarreal? There's somewhere in Spain. I think it's Villarreal. I could be wrong. But he's been sold for 10 million. So I think having Maguire around, I don't think is a bad option. He's 31 years old. Of course, he is extremely good in the air, and I feel like when we play against teams where we need to sit a little bit deeper, Maguire could be an option, or against those teams that are very, very kind of physical. If de Ligt is out, I think Maguire could step into that role. He's the more valuable out of him and Lindelof. So if we are to sell one or the other, it's kind of a coin toss as to who we sell. But I think Maguire is more likely to stay than somebody like Victor Lindelof. So that's why I've got him at the cover of right centre back. In terms of left centre back, then we have Johnny Evans. We did re-sign him for a year. In my opinion, was one of the most solid defenders that we had last year. Unfortunately, we had so many injuries, you know, with Martinez, even Maguire, Varane, Lindelof at some points, and then we ended up with Evans and Cambuala, along with a whole host of different centre-back partnerships. But Evans actually performed really well. Being 36, we weren't able to kind of push up the pitch as much. He was still aggressive. He liked the ball to his feet from Onana and was able to build out from the back, which was really good. He's a leader, he's a true professional from all accounts, and he's really good to have around the dressing room as well. And if we are to sign people like Euro, he's going to need leadership, and with kind of Martinez, Evans and de Ligt, even Maguire to some degree, we're going to have so much to kind of nurture young talents coming through. And if we go in the direction that INEOS want, which is sign players under the age of 23 or 25, then I think this will be pretty good. On the left hand side then we have Luke Shaw, of course, if he stays fit, but he hasn't stayed fit, which is why I'm going with Miguel, I think that's how you say it, Miguel Gutierrez from Girona. He's 22, and in terms of output, 35 games played. He was a star player for them, a very important player, valued around 20 million on Transfermarkt. 35 games played, 2 goals and 7 assists, which is really, really nice. And I feel like it's a position that if Luke Shaw is fit, I think Luke Shaw starts. But if he's not, and he can't play every game from what Ten Hag has said, then I think a starting or a good enough left back to start in the Premier League straight off the bat is something that we definitely need. And this kind of opens up more options. So if Gutierrez then starts at left back, and let's say Martinez gets injured, instead of starting Evans, we can now play Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre back, which is, in my opinion, where he should start playing more often, even in a back three, because his body, just in a modern game, he can't take running up and down the pitch for 35 games in a season, or 38 games, however many it is. I don't think he can kind of cope with that anymore. So having Miguel Gutierrez in reserve behind him would be incredible, and I think it would be able to kind of transform our play. And if you look, we then have Yoro as the right back, who can then slot in a back three, which allows Gutierrez to get even further forward, and then Garnacho kind of cuts in. It just allows everyone to play their natural best positions and getting the most out of everybody. But then let's say we wanted to switch it, Luke Shaw, Martinez and De Ligt with Dalot on the right. Dalot goes up, Diallo then cuts inside, Luke Shaw becomes the left centre back. It's a very fluid kind of system, and with these players in the back, I feel like it could really, really work. And now in terms of another signing that could potentially happen as a complete backup is David Hanko from Feyenoord in the Eredivisie. He's 6'1", 26 years old. He is valued at 35 million, but I don't think that is kind of what it will cost. I think it will be quite significantly less. And if that is the case, I really think we should maybe be looking at Hanko to replace Evans as the backup to Martinez, and then Evans is kind of the fifth choice centre back, which I think personally would suit and be better for Manchester United. And of course he can play at left back. He has played at left back this season as well, and for his national team in the Euros. So if he is cheap enough, I think that would be an awesome. That's why I've got him in yellow, because I'm really not sure if that's going to be doable. Moving on to the central defensive midfielder, the position I feel like is most important, that we definitely need to sign somebody, because I think Casemiro is going, and that is Manuel Ugarte. I have put him in other videos as well. If you haven't checked those out, make sure you do. I go into kind of the tactics more in depth rather than transfers, but 23 years old, 6 foot tall. He's valued at 45 million, played 25 games in the league last season, with 3 assists as well. He is more of a Kante. He's more of like a destroyer. He goes and gets the ball. Of course he can play side to side passes. He's got a decent range of passing, but he's more of a kind of go and win the ball, very aggressive, which would suit us. That's why we signed Amrabat last season for loan, because of how he played for Morocco in the World Cup. Very aggressive, high up the pitch, high intensity, and that's kind of what we lacked last season. It was, you know, we had Casemiro, then we had Maguire behind him and Johnny Evans, and of course they're not going to be outpacing anybody. But with Manuel Ugarte pushing up the pitch alongside, you know, Kobe, who did really well in Euros in terms of winning the ball back high up the pitch, and Bruno, who is the energizer man, who just runs for days and days and days, they would really just complement each other. But Ugarte, hopefully we can sign him, and I think they're asking for a little bit too much at the moment, which is why I think a loan deal would probably suit us a little bit more. We wouldn't have to pay such kind of a big fee for Ugarte right now, and then maybe look at buying him next season, or if it's like a mandatory loan to buy, kind of what we did with Amrabat, which was obviously optional. But yeah, that's what I think is going to be the best signing for Manchester United. And talking of Sofyan Amrabat, I have put him again in yellow because if it is a deal that we can do, I think we only have to pay around 10 million, which is not a lot of money, to be honest. And again, even if we could spread that out over 2 years and pay 5 million per year, that adds another player that we know we're going to get some decent kind of use out of. He's not going to complain a lot in terms of he's not starting a lot of games, but he's going to be more influential. We saw it at the end of last season where he played against Manchester City in the FA Cup final, even against was it Arsenal, Newcastle and Brighton as well. When he did play, he looked really good and solid, which is what we hoped for the entire season. I'm not sure why we didn't see that. But yeah, I think Amrabat, if we can get him in, of course, I think we should. If we can't, then I think, is it Toby Collier, who Ten Hag put his arm around after the FA Cup final, very much like he did with Kobbie Mainoo the year before. So I think Collier will be the one who is introduced to the first team and gets his appearances. And if we don't sign somebody like Amrabat as a backup, I think Collier steps in that role. Now, in terms of left central midfielder, this is also somebody who I think could fulfill that role if we don't get Amrabat and Collier isn't ready, and that is Adrien Rabiot. Currently a free transfer, which is massive. He's 29 years old. He is a big central midfielder. He's 6'3". He's valued around 35 million. He played 31 games in the league, 5 goals and 3 assists. I think he's kind of very versatile. He could play as a number 6, although he is more of a number 8, kind of like Kobbie Mainoo. And this again takes pressure off Kobbie Mainoo in being just the player that has to play every single game, because we don't have another player that can do that kind of role. And if we are to sign Rabiot, not only is it going to be good in terms of not having to pay a big transfer fee, he comes in and fulfills multiple roles which we are needing in the midfield. And of course we do have other players, Eriksen, Scott McTominay, also in the midfield, who we could rely on, but I think some of those will be going, and we will look at that towards the end of the video, where I have a list of players who should be sold and how much and how likely it is and how much money we're going to get. But yeah, I think Adrien Rabiot is a signing that makes sense for us as long as his wages aren't crazy, which is going to be the problem. We've wanted to sign him for a few years, but his kind of wage demands have been a little bit too high, and I don't really see that being any different this year, just because he's, you know, a free agent again. So if his wages are good and we don't have to pay a lot, I don't think it's a bad thing to sign him for, you know, 2, maybe 3 years, to keep him around and have as a versatile player. So yeah, that's Adrien Rabiot, left centre mid. In terms of right centre mid, then we have gone with Mason Mount. In my other previous video, I've put him on the right wing because that's personally how I see Erik Ten Hag playing him. I don't believe we signed Mason Mount to be a backup for 50 million and wear Manchester United's number 7 shirt. I don't see it. He's 25, so he's going to start coming into his prime right about now. He's 5'11". He only played 14 games, of course. Got injured so much last season, wasn't able to really participate in anything, which was a real shame. So hopefully when he comes back from pre-season, and I think pre-season actually starts today, and we are playing against a Norwegian team. So if you guys want me to kind of potentially do a tactic review of it, because I should be watching, then let me know down in the comments, and I can get that done for you. But yeah, I think Mason Mount is the natural replacement for Bruno Fernandes if Bruno ever leaves, or if Bruno's injured, which isn't very likely, touch wood. But I think Mount slots in there pretty easily. Now we are going to move on to the front three, So on the left hand side, it is going to be Marcus Rashford. I personally believe it could be a toss up between Garnacho and Rashford, whether even Garnacho starts on the right hand side and Rashford starts on the left with Luke Shaw. And if you go and look at the stats of Marcus Rashford compared to when Luke Shaw plays and when he doesn't, it's really stark. There's a big difference. But Marcus Rashford, still only 27, he's 6'1", he's valued at 60 million, which if Manchester United got a decent offer, I think he is one of the players that would move on, because that's just pure profit. If we get a bid that is exact valuation at 60 million, I think we sell him, we get 60 million, and that almost pays for, Ugarte, De Ligt and Yoro at least for 2 years if we do it in installments. So, but I personally think he will stay. He will improve this season with 33 games played, 7 goals and 2 assists. That isn't the type of standard we expect from Marcus Rashford, being the star player, and I think the highest earner at the club as well. But I think this year is going to be a very, very important one. If he has a really bad season, again, I think he's more than likely to be sold at the end of it. But I think this could be his redeeming season for us. But yeah, that's the left wing. Then we're going to move on to the right wing, and that's going to be Jadon Sancho. This is going to be very controversial. Now, in my opinion, I think we should sell Jadon Sancho just because of what happened last season. Of course, me personally, I'm actually excited about what's going to happen with Jadon Sancho, because I think he's a fantastic player when he's on it, when he's interested, when he's committed. He can be a really elite level kind of attacking winger, creative winger, somebody that we've been crying out for, but for some reason it hasn't worked at Manchester United as of yet. It looks like they've buried the hatchet between himself and Erik ten Hag, and I think he starts over Antony. Antony had a really poor season, and with kind of Sancho coming back into the fray, having a relatively good stint with Borussia Dortmund, 14 games, 2 goals, 3 assists, and of course some really good performances in the Champions League, I think he will start more games alongside Diallo as well, sharing the load. Depending on the system as well, he could play as a natural number 10, could play out on the left, even a false 9, which he's actually started playing with in last year's pre-season, which again I did watch, and he played as a false 9 and actually did really well. I was excited for the season, and then everything went down, and Sancho didn't play. He just sat at home for 6 months collecting a wage playing FIFA. So I personally would sell Jadon Sancho, but of course every player deserves a second chance, and I think as long as he works hard and commits himself to this project, he could be a very influential player on this right hand side or even left hand side. So in terms of striker then, it is obviously Joshua Zirkzee, somebody that we have just signed. I'm not entirely sure how much money it was. I think we've paid just over his release clause, because again we're doing it in installments instead of just a straight deal, which I'm okay with, because I think for a release clause you have to pay all of the money up front. It's not like we'll pay 50 now and then 50% later. It's you have to pay everything right now. And Joshua Zirkzee, 23 years old, 6'3", and he's valued at 50 million, 34 games, 11 goals and 5 assists. He's very different to Rasmus Højlund, and again, if you haven't gone and watched my previous videos on either the Zirkzee one or how Erik ten Hag will set up Manchester United, then make sure you go and check that out, because I've got some ideas on how both of them could potentially play next to each other. But there's not really much to say about Joshua Zirkzee. I'm super excited to see him in action and kind of how we're going to use him and utilise him. He is a player that could play as a number 10, left wing, right wing and a striker, so there's going to be lots of rotation up there, which is going to be really fun to see. A very creative striker rather than an out and out number 9 getting in behind and causing problems running channels, which Rasmus Højlund is really good at. But yeah, I think as a whole, if you go and look over the entire team, we have strong depth. If this kind of transfer window were to happen, we have strong depth everywhere, plus we have other players. We have Palestri if he comes back, we have Antony. Who else have we got? We have Wan-Bissaka that isn't here. So Scott McTominay, yeah, we've got a lot of players in this kind of 11, and there's so many different kind of combinations you could play depending on opponents or how Erik ten Hag wants to set it up. So yeah, we're going to quickly look at transfers and how much we're likely to get for people and the players that we're going to, who in my opinion should go. So on screen now, you're going to see out on the left hand side the transfers that have been already dealt with of Varane, Alvaro Fernandez, who has gone to Benfica, I believe, Donny van de Beek, who has gone for 500,000, but a potential package where it could lead up to as much as 20 million, I think, pounds or euros, but somewhere around 20 million, which is, depending if he reaches it, could be incredible. Cambuala has gone, as I said, to Spain for 10 million, Martial out on a free as well, and Mason Greenwood for 31 million. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but that is the bid that we have accepted. It is now just down to Mason Greenwood accepting it and then it being official. And then you're going to see 4 players on screen: Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Scott McTominay, Victor Lindelof and Casemiro. I think these are all the players that should leave this summer, and I'm going to give my reason as to why really quickly. So Casemiro, although in the first season he was immense, last season he was, I couldn't even recognise Casemiro from the season before. His legs had gone from what I saw. Even when he played at centre half, his decision making and everything was really poor. He just didn't look like he was interested. And then kind of even the FA Cup final, just left without the team and went on holiday straight away, which was really strange considering now it's reports are coming out saying that he wants to stay. So very confusing, but I think Casemiro, we need to cash in on him. There are offers potentially in Saudi Arabia almost up to 40 million, which is absurd. But if we are able to get 40 million for Casemiro, 100% take it. I think every Manchester United fan would at this point. 32 as well, so he's not getting any younger, and he's going to decline athletically. And going off last season, I think that's pretty much already gone. So it's a shame because I liked Casemiro his entire career. He is one hell of a player. But I think it is time to move on for him. Victor Lindelof, in my opinion, should stay over Harry Maguire just because he is more versatile. He is slightly quicker. He's, in my opinion, better at progressing the ball as well. But I think the club are going to keep Harry Maguire over somebody like Victor Lindelof. Lindelof has been here for quite some time, so I think the 15 million that we do get from him, we won't have to pay any debt off. Because of course, if you buy a player, so say 50 million, and then next season they fail completely and then you sell them for 25, you still have to pay the installments left on that player until it's paid off, which we have done with Victor Lindelof. He's been here for, as I said, quite some time, so that 15 million goes straight back into the club and transfers, which is nice. And then Scott McTominay, 32 million valued, which, if we are to get anything like that, would be incredible. He's 27, so he should be at the point of his career where he wants to play regular first team football, whether it be in, the Premier League. There are potential bids from West Ham, but we're asking for 40 million for a Premier League club, and there are also talks for a Turkish club, as I read this morning, which could be interesting, but I don't think Scott McTominay would want to play in Turkey. I think if he does go anywhere, it will be to the Premier League, and if we're able to get 30 million for him, I think that's incredible because it's pure profit. We don't have to pay any transfer fees. It goes straight back into the club, straight back into the transfers, and it helps us massively with FFP as well. So if we are to sell Scott McTominay, everything like that goes in. Same with Mason Greenwood as well. We don't have to pay anything, no FFP, bad things. Only good things come from Mason Greenwood and Scott McTominay being sold. So if we can sell him, I hope we do. I hope we have the chance and a decent bid comes in. Same with Wan-Bissaka. Unfortunately, he's just not what we need. I like Wan-Bissaka. I actually think he is arguably one of the best one-on-one defenders in the Premier League for a fullback. He's very, very, very good defensively, but offensively and going forward, he lacks lacks the kind of creativity that somebody like a Dalot can offer, or a Luke Shaw, Gutierrez, somebody that is more progressive and direct. Although I think he has done it in parts of his season, of course, I just don't think he does it enough. And if there are offers, that money can help us secure a transfer target like Lenny Yoro, who can then play as a right back as well. I think if Wan-Bissaka does go and we bring in Yoro, I still think we need to either buy, you know, a 10 million youngster from somewhere who can provide some cover, or promote a youth player, because I don't think 2 right backs is enough. We were somewhat lucky because we had Victor Lindelof last season, so even if both got injured, Lindelof could slide across to right back. That's why I would keep Lindelof over Maguire, but I think, as I said, Lindelof will go. But yeah, in terms of the total value for all of these players, then the 90 million is the valuation. So Wan-Bissaka, McTominay, Lindelof, Casemiro, just half of their value. So Wan-Bissaka 10 million, Scott McTominay 16, and so on and so on. That and everything on the left hand side leads to 90 million, and then the most, which is just their valuation, is 134 million. So I think it would be a really kind of amazing transfer window if all of this is to get done. Of course, I think it will be extremely difficult for that to happen, but you never know. This is just kind of the video of the perfect transfer window for Manchester United and what would need to happen, in my personal opinion. But yeah, this is going to be the end of the video. If you have enjoyed it, if you do agree with me, if you disagree with me, and you think we should sign other players, put it down in the comments. I would love to see kind of your suggestions and recommendations. That would be really fun to see. And yeah, so thank you very much for watching, guys. Leave a like on the video, also comment everything down below, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you are notified when I do upload more videos. But this is going to be the end of it. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you next time.